The following presentation is a recording of a talk I gave at Stony Brook University on May 1st, 2013, entitled Beautiful Baubles, the Unique Harmonic Language of Judith Weir, focusing on her piano concerto from 1996 and 97. The screen will show you most everything you need to see, but I will also make occasional reference to handouts, and you can find free links to these handouts in the comment section below. You can also find an electronic copy of the entire lecture there. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the composer Judith Weir for taking the time to speak with me about her music. And if you would like to hear her piano concerto in its entirety, I recommend the album Judith Weir, Piano Concerto, Distance and Enchantment, and Other Works with the pianist William Howard. Beautiful Baubles, the Unique Harmonic Language of Judith Weir. Judith Weir's instrumental music is elegant, precise, and clear, and draws from a harmonic palette that sounds both familiar and exotic. The goal of this investigation is to understand how her unique language operates, zeroing in specifically on harmony. Her 1996-97 piano concerto is a work for piano and string orchestra, and the 8-minute first movement alone is a representative example of her instrumental writing. An analysis of the movement reveals that Weir employs one specific octatonic collection pervasively. At times, she is finding and drawing out the connective tissue between that collection and another diatonic collection. At other times, her formal juxtaposition of these two contrasting harmonic worlds destabilizes both of them. Weir's music interests me not only because of its beautiful textures and colors, but also because it has rarely, if ever, been written about through an academic lens, despite receiving widespread critical praise. Since Weir's music is not as widely known in the US as it is in the UK, I will give you a taste of her distinctive sound with a few brief passages. If any of these excerpts intrigues you further, I have an additional handout of program notes at the door that you can take when you leave, or if you're watching this video on YouTube, in the comment section below. On the sheet you already have, there is some brief biographical information, again in the comment section below if you're watching this on YouTube, that I won't go over except to say that it's possible to see where composers she has had as teachers have helped to shape her language. Here are the excerpts. I have said that Weir's harmonic language simultaneously evokes the familiar and exotic. In this context, I use those terms to contrast recognizably diatonic harmonies and non-diatonic sonorities. In Weir's case, non-diatonic sonorities are often octatonic, but can also be modal or derived from a short melodic series she is working with, or in some rare instances, they can be utterly anomalous. A widespread use of non-diatonic sonorities, though, is not the sole reason her music has been described as otherworldly. More general characteristics, like her distinctive use of register, especially high registers, her timbral and textural choices, and her voicing and orchestration choices also substantially contribute to this quality in her music. Weir's clarity of texture is a hallmark of her style. In the first movement of the piano concerto, the piece that is the subject of this talk, the piano's sustained pedal is never touched, and the piano melodies are always presented in octaves. The solo instrument rings out in the texture above a shimmering backdrop of sustained homophonic strings, and the transparency of sound serves Weir's attention to detail, for every detail becomes audible. The concerto's orchestration mirrors the harmonic series in that octaves reinforce fundamentals in low registers, and the middle register remains relatively uncluttered, while the higher register is densely populated, often with extended thirds. Weir's tendency to concentrate thematic material in the higher register, along with a tendency to omit thirds or fifths of chords, lends the material much of its unearthly and characteristically bare sound. Critics and interviewers rarely discuss rhythm in Weir's work, yet it is one of her music's most distinctive traits. Weir's compositional process, by her own description, involves working from rhythmic, harmonic, and melodic cells. She develops and constantly varies these small fragments, ever in new combinations, and the rhythmic result is a sometimes jerky, mechanical effect that brings Ligeti's pattern mechanico style to mind. In more static passages, the rhythm is still unpredictable, suggesting that the material is floating rather than moving in time. Additionally, unexpected elisions cause perceived accelerations. These general rhythmic, timbral, registral, and textural characteristics are recognizable in all of Weir's instrumental music. In the first movement of the piano concerto, they are also directly connected to Weir's use of harmony. To examine harmony more comprehensively, I first outlined the form. The movement is divisible into 5 sections, the 5th of which functions like a recapitulation of the first. The first, second, and third sections introduce new thematic material, while the fourth primarily combines elements introduced previously. The form may also be loosely compared to sonata form, where sections 1 and 2 comprise theme 1 and theme 2 of the exposition, sections 3 and 4 constitute the development, and section 5 is the recapitulation. To label the form in this way, however, is to dismiss other thematic elements that suggest through composition, so I choose to keep the numerical labels. It is worth noting, since ambiguity is such a crucial element of Weir's harmonic language, that there is formal ambiguity as well. Beginnings and ends of sections are clearly marked in my diagram for simplicity, but the transitions are not so clear when listening. Rather, transitions to new sections happen gradually, over a period of 5 to 7 bars. For harmonic analysis, I have selected 3 representative passages from the movement, each of which either introduces new harmonic territory or treats previously introduced harmonic territory in a new way. These passages include all of section 1, most of section 2, and all of section 3, referred to hereafter as passages 1, 2, and 3, respectively. Ambiguity is the key to passage 1, the opening of the movement. Generally speaking, the strings present material derived from a diatonic collection, while the piano presents material derived from an octatonic collection. However, it is not quite that simple. The 2 collections Weir chooses share an unusually high number of common tones. Example 1 on the screen illustrates these commonalities. Throughout passage 1, the strings sustain harmonies suggestive of D minor, while the piano decorates these harmonies with short melodic bursts in octatonic 1-2. The result is a D minor that sounds like it has shaken loose from its roots and cannot quite settle. Incidentally, the eerie sound of strings playing senza vibrato only heightens this sense of harmonic insecurity. Weir takes her naturally ambiguous material a step further by omitting a number of thirds and fifths from chords. Omissions like these further increase harmonic ambiguity, allowing many chords to play for both teams. Ultimately, 13 of the first 20 chords played by the string section exist in both a D minor and an octatonic 1-2 context, while only 7 of the 20 are unique to D minor. Example 2 in your handout is a harmonic reduction of the passage we've just heard. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find a link to example 2 in the comment section below. For simplicity, I have removed the second piano staff, played by the left hand, since it merely doubles the right hand down an octave. Note heads in the piano part contain dots to represent that they are not sustained. Observe that the piano is always in octatonic 1-2, except in 2 rare instances where it anticipates a harmony in the strings. These instances are indicated with dotted lines. Among the string harmonies, rectangles designate chords that exist in both collection, while circles designate chords that exist in D minor only. A preponderance of rectangles shows that Weir favors ambiguous harmonies. Roman numeral analysis is not too helpful in this context except to show that Weir does not present expected tonal progressions, nor does she present a clear bass line. Certain pairings of chords suggest a repeated predominant to dominant motion, but dominant does not resolve to tonic. Instead, the chords float back and forth, often left incomplete or placed in inversions that further disguise their relationships. In other words, they begin to sound the way one reviewer has described Weir's music, like beautiful baubles strung together. The augmented sixth chords that I have marked exemplify many of the techniques Weir employs throughout the passage. Where a D minor triad was made ambiguous by pitch omission, the augmented sixth chords are made ambiguous with unusual voice leading, or in the case of bar 9, pitch addition. In no case does the augmented interval resolve outward, and in few cases is the lowered sixth scale degree in the bass. I nonetheless label these slippery harmonies as augmented sixth chords based on the strength of the dominant 7 harmonies that, on the first 2 occasions, directly follow them. Were it not for these dominant resolutions, the altered chords could be heard merely as masses of color. Instead, they are masses of color with recognizable implications, even if those implications are not always fulfilled. By the way, if you're looking at example 2 in a separate window, now's the time to look back at the video for the animation. Finally, the augmented sixth is one of the many chords that could be derived from either collection, and as such, its appearance allows Weir to introduce a new pitch from the octatonic collection, namely A-flat, without leaving the realm of what is harmonically possible in D minor. Through such creative use of common threads, Weir intertwines the 2 pitch collections completely in the opening passage. I'm going to discuss passage 3 next and save 2 for last. Passage 3 ushers in a lush new theme in D major. Before going into more detail, I will play an excerpt of that theme now. The material is decidedly diatonic. No longer is Weir drawing out commonalities between 2 separate pitch collections, yet the sound remains ambiguous in some similar ways. Bare triads are peppered with extended thirds that reach into the registral stratosphere and color the harmony like beautiful skyscrapers without strong foundations. Here on the slide, example 3 shows a representative trio of chords from this section. All are top-heavy with bare foundations and feature either omitted pitches or extended thirds, or both. Tricks of voice leading and orchestration further confound harmonic roles here, as when F sharp, the third of tonic, is placed prominently at the top of a large dominant chord, or when the combination of extended thirds above G major gives the subdominant harmony a strong flavor of tonic. As with passage 1, traditional harmonic progressions in passage 3 are absent or thwarted. Harmonic functions flip between dominant and subdominant, rarely reaching any lasting tonic resolution, and most brief tonic arrivals that do occur are glossed over in the texture. In other words, passage 3 is one long build-up that, despite a few suggestive moments, never fully climaxes. Unlike in passage 1, however, in passage 3, it is clear that such harmonic misdirection results from the use of cells as a compositional tool. Example 4 shows a completed harmonic cell. The cell, as shown, only occurs twice in all of passage 3, but incomplete chunks of it appear throughout. To map some of what is happening, I have created a key in which each chord in Weir's harmonic cell is represented by a colored box. The diagram I am about to display on screen is what happens when you take these colored boxes and line them up exactly the way their associated chords appear in bars 98 through 112, which is the excerpt we heard a moment ago. Here we go. Now, the colors represent the harmonies, but with this diagram, I am also able to show time and registral expansion. The width of a box corresponds to length of time, or how long each harmony is sustained, and the height of a box, or its vertical expansion in both directions, corresponds to an expansion of register in both directions. As I play this excerpt again, follow along with the diagram. Do not be distracted by the piano, which is often arpeggiating. Listen to the strings, and I will help orient you as well with the mouse. The diagram illustrates how bars 98 through 109 build significant harmonic tension in anticipation of the forte tonic arrival in bar 110. But already by bar 113, that arrival in D major is destabilized by the reappearance of octatonic. In case you were wondering where it went, the octatonic 1-2 collection returns in this passage in a different, purer form. Instead of being mixed into the texture, it is isolated. At first, it serves as a quick palate cleanser between diatonic harmonies. Later, however, it grows into more of an entree, and other similarly exotic sonorities are brought in to supplement it. Example 5 shows a map of harmonic contrast in passage 3. Two harmonic worlds are juxtaposed. Pink boxes represent diatonicism, here D major, as opposed to the D minor of passage 1, and everything else is non-diatonic. Toward the beginning are the octatonic 1-2 palette cleansers, but it is the later sections of non-diatonic harmony that provide harmonic contrast on a larger formal level. While each of the later sections contains pitches non-native to D major, the latter two sections sound especially foreign. This is partly the result of a significant texture change. From bars 145 through 178, the string orchestra drops out, leaving only a string quintet beneath the piano. This is the only passage in the movement where Weir calls for a chamber texture, and the effect is eerie and suddenly hollow. At the same time, a growing abundance of dissonance adds harmonic tension, the peak of which is ushered in by a new irregular harmonic idea, colored black on my diagram. The black set of pitches, which I've labeled simply anomalous, consists of 3 pairs of semitones, each separated by a minor third. It is a testament to Weir's awareness of transition, even on a micro level, that she introduces this highly unusual material gradually, and prepares both its arrival and departure with the now more familiar octatonic 1-2 collection. In fact, the string quintet portion of passage 3 can be easily understood as 2 brief forays into the unknown and back again. The closer one gets to home territory, the more familiar trees and bushes one begins to recognize. To conclude the discussion of passage 3, I will play the string quintet section, starting the audio just a little bit before it, so you can hear the texture contrast. Again, I'll help orient you as you follow the diagram with my mouse. This audio example proceeds more slowly. hope you recognize some trees. On screen now is a reduction of passage 2. The top two staves provide the piano part as written, with the exception that runs are again reduced into clustered note heads containing dots. The bottom two staves are a reduction of the string orchestra. The whole of passage 2 is 70 bars long, so this excerpt that you are looking at accounts for about half of that. I'll play the entire excerpt for you now, and you can follow on the screen. The strings are all playing pizzicato, so they are hard to hear, although there's actually a more significant explanation for why they're hard to hear that I will discuss shortly. Here's the excerpt. Passage 2, you may have noticed, consists of two separate themes that continually interrupt one another and develop in short spurts. Since only one theme is heard at a time, harmonic ground established by the first is destabilized when the second enters, and vice versa. As befits Weir's fondness for cells, both themes are created by piecing together small fragments in ever-new combinations, but the low theme is melodic and develops by an additive process, whereas the high theme is melodic and harmonic in nature and develops more freely. The high theme is sonically familiar despite the disguise of a new staccato texture because it is actually made up of compressed material from passage 1. In the high theme, as before in passage 1, melodic material is derived from the octatonic 1-2 scale, with harmonic material derived from D minor. Again, harmonic material is voiced so that many chords exist in both D minor and octatonic 1-2, maintaining the characteristic ambiguity of the movement's opening material, just with the much faster harmonic rhythm. Let me prove this. Example 7 shows the high theme from bars 40 to 53, isolated with all interruptions removed. The colored shapes you see follow a similar procedure to example 2 from your handout. Remember, if you're watching this as a YouTube video, the example 2 handout is available as a link in the comments section. Brown squares designate sonorities that can exist in both a D minor and an octatonic 1-2 context, while blue circles designate harmonies that are only possible in D minor. Just as in passage 1, the runs are always octatonic, and I have represented these with clusters of dotted note heads encased in brown rectangles. As the example makes clear, the octatonic 1-2 and D minor collections are still very much intertwined. Beyond Weir's use of the same two collections, however, the high theme is full of motivic similarities to passage 1 that become apparent when we assign chord symbols. Due to space constraints, the chord symbols are listed vertically in this example instead of horizontally. If you refer back to example 2 in your handout and compare the chord symbols listed there with the chord symbols listed here beneath the high theme, you'll start to see connections. The enigmatic F over C sharp sonority that opens the piece reappears in the high theme as an F augmented triad, this time with its missing third restored. If an augmented 3 chord seems like a strange harmony to use in this context, think of it instead as an enharmonically spelled altered dominant, A augmented, which is how it functions to the ear anyway. The French augmented 6th chord from passage 1 also makes an appearance in the high theme, but this time in root position. In fact, once you choose to ignore chunks of repetition, what you are left with is a harmonic passage that is, save for voicing variations, identical to the opening of passage 1. The lone exception is this little B-flat chord. Here are a few audio examples to compare. First, from passage 2. Next, passage 1. Again, passage 2. Passage 1. And all together, passage 2. Passage 1. Dissecting the high theme was a fun process, and I had hoped to find equally recognizable patterns in the low theme, but the low theme is largely new material. Its beginning suggests a continuation of D minor from passage 1, but it turns out to be in E minor once E is introduced a few bars later. To refresh your memory, the low theme sounds like this. If you've been following along in the reduction, you probably wonder why you can't hear all of the notes. This is an effect of Weir's orchestration. For this theme, the piano has the melody and is marked forte. The cello and bass double the melody, playing pizzicato octaves, and they are marked mezzo piano. But the violins and violas, which stack above the piano line, effectively harmonizing it, are marked both pizzicato and pianissimo, even though they're already scored in a naturally quieter part of their range. In other words, the violins and violas are not intended to be heard, at least not as harmonies. As the composer pointed out to me in one of my 2 interviews with her, the violin and viola pitches loosely correspond to the overtone series, and so serve to thicken the sound of the E minor melody. The effect is not a harmonic one, but a timbral one. Out of curiosity, I entered all of the pitches from the low theme into a notation program and played them all back at the same volume. This is what it sounded like. The chords sound familiar, actually. After conducting my detailed analysis of passage 3, I understood why. Take this piece of passage 2 and place it next to the passage 3 harmonic cell, and you can see the similarity. The same harmonic kernels are active in both passages, making the ever so subtle coloring of the low theme a harmonic anticipation of what is to come. To be fair, the harmonies aren't intended to be heard, and the fact that some of them are similar to harmonies in the passage 3 harmonic cell could be a coincidence, a result of Weir's fondness for extended tertian chords, or mirroring the overtone series when she orchestrates harmonies. In that case, the melodic fragment, the repeated motion from G to A, would be the true connection. In whatever form, however, the link exists. Overall, in passage 2, the low theme anticipates passage 3, even while the high theme is reimagining passage 1. Broader thematic connections like these unite the 3 passages in spite of dramatic textural differences between them, and the material in passage 2 is made more familiar as a result. Let us turn to a final interesting harmonic moment in passage 2. Over the course of the passage, the relationship between the 2 themes, like the themes themselves, undergoes variation. At first, they seem to be competing, like in this last excerpt. Well, toward the end, they seem to be developing side by side. In the middle of the passage, the high theme is structured so that it sounds like it is reacting to the low theme, a bit like an echo. I will come back to the reason for this momentarily. The harmonic activity in the middle portion of the passage is what I would like to look at now. Measure-wise, the excerpt on screen picks up exactly where the last excerpt left off, at bar 60. As you listen to this excerpt, notice how the material in the high theme sounds less familiar than before. If the high material sounded less familiar this time, it is because Weir has again turned to other non-diatonic sonorities besides octatonic 1-2 for variety. or as was the case in passage 3 for added tension. These other non-diatonic sonorities include octatonic O1, octatonic O2, and the whole tone scale. As we have seen previously, the collections Weir is working with in this excerpt share a number of common tones, so many of the resulting sonorities can be derived from multiple collections. Here is where the sonorities in this excerpt can be traced to. I'm limiting this example to the high theme. Sonorities that have multiple boxes beneath them can exist in multiple collections. With all the possible combinations afforded by the 3 octatonic collections, it may seem silly to include the whole tone scale at all, but whole tone clusters are very recognizable, so even if those clusters could have been derived from an octatonic collection, they also strongly evoke the whole tone scale. Moreover, whole tones are the only collection that can explain where the string sonorities are coming from in bars 73 and 75, so the scale certainly becomes relevant by then. Formally, all of the aforementioned less familiar dissonances begin to sound at the moment that both themes start to really push toward the outer boundaries of register, building tension steadily until the sudden texture change at bar 73. Even as the high material appears to retreat into more familiar octatonic 1-2 territory around bar 69, the lower E minor material makes its own gradual transition toward octatonic 1-2, adding to the harmonic instability that characterizes this excerpt. Bars 73 through 76 interrupt that instability and release tension as the piano takes over the texture. In this way, bars 73 through 76 function like a reset button, because afterward the material becomes again similar to the first passage 2 excerpt we looked at. On a larger scale, then, Weir surrounds her more exotic material in the middle of the passage with other, more familiar material on either side, just like she did in passage 3 on a smaller scale. I mentioned earlier that the middle area of passage 2 felt like a reaction. At first, it was not clear why or what indeed the high theme was reacting to, but listening to passage 2 in its entirety brought this answer to light. At the end of the previous excerpt, bars 26 through 60, the high theme has a surprise arrival in D major, so the middle section's harmonic instability can be understood as an attempt to come to grips with the new pitches. After about 18 bars, the original passage 2 material returns, and the high theme reverts to its ambiguous mix of D minor and octatonic 1-2 for bars 77 through 93. It appears as though the D major arrival has been forgotten. Right at the end of passage 2, however, in bar 94, another far more momentous D major arrival occurs, and this time it sticks, signaling the beginning of passage 3. Having investigated the harmonic activity of each passage in detail, I now have some large-scale observations to make about Weir's compositional techniques as they relate to harmony. 2 techniques stand out in the passages discussed. Passage 1 was characterized by harmonic ambiguity. Weir capitalized on the commonalities between D minor and octatonic 1-2 to create material that was vaguely both and definitively neither. Passage 3 was characterized primarily by harmonic juxtaposition. Stretches of D major alternated with stretches of non-diatonic sonorities that included octatonic 1-2, octatonic O1, and an anomalous set that ushered in the highest point of tension in the passage. Octatonic 1-2 was also used as a momentary palate cleanser to wash away the sound of a previous tonic arrival. By the end of the passage, approximately equal time had been devoted to diatonic and non-diatonic sound worlds, such that, in this listener's memory at least, neither had gained a stronger foothold than the other. Passage 2 was characterized by both techniques. Juxtaposition was constant, since 2 themes rooted in different harmonic contexts were always interrupting one another, destabilizing whatever harmonic ground had just been established. Ambiguity played a role as well, to some extent in the low theme, since the melody implied D major right up until an entrance of E suggested E minor instead, and to a greater extent in the high theme, which itself was a reconstitution of ambiguous material from passage 1. Later in the high theme, when this material underwent slight harmonic variations, the new sonorities Weir introduced were derived alternately from the octatonic 1-2, octatonic O2, and whole tone scales, again ensuring what I have come to view as Weir's ultimate harmonic goal, that no single harmonic world is allowed to settle in the ear. Weir's palette is diverse, but diversity alone does not account for her language. It is Weir's deft control of her palette, specifically her handling of the commonalities between the various harmonic worlds she introduces, that creates new possibilities in what might otherwise be familiar material. These harmonic tendencies, complemented by her music's other characteristic elements, ultimately form the syntax for a compositional language that is distinctly and uniquely Judith Weir's. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave me a comment or email me at andreadalyinfo@gmail.com. You can also visit my website at andreadalymusic.com.